The video is working. Okay. Tonight's topic. We talked about Hebrew names last week. We came to it because Elu Shmos, the Baal Turim says that there's a remez there, the Goshinu Shmam, they didn't change their names. So we talked about, do we say that since that was the reason why they were nigal, does that demonstrate the importance of having, if they had Hebrew names, so we should also have Hebrew names? Is it okay to have a secular or English name or whatever, different language? So we talked about that at length. Basically, we saw that there was the two big players were the Maram Shik, who was a Hungarian Rav, Paisik, it's a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer in the 19th century. He is fire and brimstone against using secular names. He says it's a bizayon. He said he met somebody who said to him, a non-Jewish person who said, "What's with you Jews? We're proud of our names. We use the names that brings us glory, and you use secular names, or use French names or Hungarian names." So he said that it's a disgrace that when people use secular names, and also he said it's because you're trying to imitate the Goyim, and there's an issur deraisa of doing something that makes you where you're doing something to imitate the non-Jewish world. On the other hand, Rav Moshe Feinstein rejects, he doesn't quote him, but he rejects the position that there's a problem with because Rav Moshe says that if there's if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're not trying to imitate the Goyim. If you go into a shoe store and you buy a pair of shoes, it's not because you want to look like everybody else, it's because that's what's available. So if that's the language of the land, it's not b'chukasein. And as far as in Mitzrayim, they spoke Lashon Kodesh, so they had Hebrew names, so we should also have Hebrew names. So he says, you see, we don't talk Hebrew, and that was one of the three things, so it must be because it's just not convenient for us. And even though that was one of the reasons why they were nigal, but that doesn't mean that it's a chiyuv. It was a positive thing. So, but it's not practical. So by the same token, it's not practical for us to not have secular names. That's what Moshe says. So, related to this topic, the Maram Shik, the same Maram Shik, who's fire and brimstone against having secular names, he's also fire and brimstone against having non-Jewish words or letters on a matzeva. He says everything has to be in Lashon Kodesh, and if not, it's a disgrace. It's a bizayon for the niftar. It's a bizayon for the other people, other niftarim in the cemetery. He's totally opposed to it, and in fact, he has two tshuvos in the Maram Shik, where he expresses his opinion. It would be wrong to say he was a Zionist, because he lived before the Zionist movement, but for sure he would have been anti-Zionist. He was a very, very big Haredi, and he was a Rav and Chust. But his appreciation for Lashon Kodesh was so strong that he said that's the Lashon the Torah was given in, and that's the Lashon of the Avos. And it's wrong to put that on the matzeva. So we're going to see two tshuvos from Maram Shik, and I'll preface this by saying that I looked at a lot of svarim on Hilchos Avelos, and they all quote the Maram Shik, and I couldn't find anybody that's in disagreement. And I didn't want to come to Harvey asked me before you walked in, he said, "Are you going to, if you say that you have to put the matzeva in Hebrew, does that mean we're going to have to hire a contractor to put shmir, stuff on the matzeva and redo it? Are we going to have to redo our matzevas?" So I didn't want that to happen. That you should leave the shiur feeling that they have to redo the matzeva, or that you feel the matzeva from my father and my mother is second class and it's a bizayon and all that. So I looked. I mamish couldn't find anybody that you'll see. There's a tshuva from Ravad Yosef, and there's a tshuva from Rav Vosner, and there's a tshuva from Rabbi the Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Waldenberg. chuvas from a whole bunch of chuvas. Everybody seems to say the same thing, that you should have. But then finally, at the end, which we'll come to at the end of this year, I found a short statement from Rav Yashav, of all people, because Rav Yashav was somewhat of a machmir. It was not known as, I mean, like if you would contrast Rav Yashav to Shlomo Zalman, who were the two major poskim in Eretz Yisrael, Rav Yashav would lean more to being machmir, and Rav Shlomo Zalman was more of a mekel. And Rav Shlomo Zalman maybe took more into consideration human sensitivities, somewhat similar to what Rav Moshe demonstrates in his chuvas. So, but Rav Yashav gives license to you won't have to change anything. Moving forward, we'll see. It depends. We're going to talk about it. Harvey and I were just talking before. Harvey had an excellent point, but just before we start, I want to just give you the lay of the land. I'm going to show you the two chuvas from the Ram Shik, and if we have time, I'll show you some other chuvas, and then I'll show you what Rav Yashav has to say on the topic. So here's on the first page. It's Tshuva Kufay and Aleph. It was written in Tuf Reish Lamed Tes, which I think was 1879, and he wrote it in Chist. My mother-in-law is from Chist. So he says it's a tshuva to Rabbi Yehuda Leibish Sapir, the Av Bezdin of Humna. So he says, Michtabo kibalti uvon dishalti al davar matzeva achas. I received your letter and you asked about a matzeva. Shehemid ish below Ratzon Hagabayim. A fellow went and put up a matzeva without permission to the Chever Kadisha. He didn't ask the Chever Kadisha. But matzeva hu nechteves b'lashon akum. It's written in a secular language. V'gam prat hashana hu ba'ofen kamosh umas ha'olam monim l'hanotzri. And the year is according to the AC after Yashka. And that's the second question. Does the year, is it okay to put on the year on the matzeva? You typically write when the person was nifter, so is it okay to write the 2018, which is 2018 from the day that Yoshka was born? So isn't that highly inappropriate? So that's what he says. That was the question. And the question was, it's Achar Maisa, it's B'di'evet. The Matzev is already up. It's similar to what I was talking about before. Do you have to go ahead and destroy your Matzevis? Oh, Im L'tocho B'tit, or do you have to, put cement over it or plaster? B'frad Mashikosabu Azman L'hanotri. Especially, the most egregious part is the date. Oh, or maybe even worse, you should have to throw the matzeva out. He says, first of all, I don't understand how that even happened, because there was a very formal system in those days. They had gabayim, and he says, and the reason why they had to have gabayim is because, I don't remember if he says or somebody else says, because in a cemetery, you're supposed to, you're not supposed to bury people who are shomer mitzvahs next to people who are not shomer mitzvahs. The Gemara says that even though einus echal isser, but it makes a difference. If a person violates more isurim, he has to be in a different part of the cemetery. So it's clear from the Gemara that you're supposed. I mean, that's halacha, brother, in Shulchan Aruch. You're supposed to have cemeteries for religious people. They should be buried with other religious people. Non-religious people, not observant people, also need to be buried in Jewish cemeteries. So, who controlled that? I mean, nowadays it's very hard to find a cemetery where you know that the grave next to the one that you purchased is not going to be purchased by somebody who's not shomer mitzvahs. So, in those days they had a Chever Kadisha system. He says, if you have a chatzar belongs to a bunch of people, you can't just do something without getting permission from everybody else. You can move over Soparak Cheskes Sabatim. Like it says in the end of Cheskes Sabatim in Baba Basim. It came basic Kvar, Shulchatza Shutfim, basic Kvar belongs to all the people that have graves there in Karka. The gam kol meis konim b'koma, and it also the niftarim have a share in the cemetery. Oh, here he mentions you're not allowed to bury Russia next to the tzaddik. He's going to brachos shulchan aruch. The only way it's controlled is through the Chever Kadisha. If somebody did something without getting permission, it's not a hefker rule. So you don't have a right to do that, and it has to be corrected. So here he says, that's his opening statement. So that first of all, he's saying whoever did this had no right to do it. So therefore, and the other people in the cemetery wouldn't want it. So it has to be corrected on that basis. But what about the issue itself? Is it appropriate, inappropriate? He says, it's an old minhag. Where does it come from, the minhag of putting up a matzeva? Where's the source? It's a Mufurish B'Quran. It's a pasuk in Chumash. The Yaakov Avinu Olav Hashem Hu Shehem Mid Matzeva Al Kever Rachel Shenemar B'Parshas Vayishach Vayakam Yitzchak. We have Yaakov. We have a bunch of Balakores here. Vayakam Yaakov Matzeva Al Kivras Rachel Ad Hayom Hazeh. Yaakov put up a matzeva on Rachel's kever, and it's standing until this very day. It's interesting. There's a few places in the Torah where it says Ad Hayom Hazeh. One of them is by kever Rachel, and one of them is by Yad Avshalom. It also says Ad Hayom Hazeh, and Yad Avshalom is still standing, and kever Rachel is still standing, which is amazing because it's kever Rachel is close to 4,000 years old.
That's interesting because usually when it says Ad Hayom Hazeh, other places. And the Bible critics use it to say that that was written much later on. But this is beautiful answer to them. This is the only place it's Ad Hayom Hazeh. It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still standing.
Kever Rachel was really Kever Rachel.
Well,
there's all debate on what Kever Rachel is.
But why not? Maybe.
The Masara is that it's kever Rachel. As far as we know. I mean, the picture's changed. It's outside Beis Lechem, so.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, but there's.
Robert Barrera was the former Baruch used to, he had a whole...
Yeah. Okay. It's a good topic about the kibbutz. So there was a Masorah. The Arizal went around Eretz Yisrael, and he identified a lot of the Kfarim. And okay, okay. But either way, and we see that they spoke Lashon Kodesh. Why? Uzeh Nikra Matzeva. Because it was called the matzeva. Yaakov put up a matzeva, so you see they spoke Lashon Kodesh. I don't understand the raya that Yaakov spoke Lashon Kodesh because it says V'yakom Yaakov matzeva. The Torah is written in Lashon Kodesh, so if the Torah needs to describe a tombstone, the Torah has to use Lashon Kodesh. Who said that Yaakov referred to it as a matzeva? I mean, when Yaakov put up a matzeva with Esav, it says with Lavan, it says. He called it Gar Sadus. The Torah tells us what he called, but here it doesn't say. It just says he put up a matzeva. Lavan called it. Yaakov called it Galed, right? So, but I don't know. He said, I mean, Umuvur da was saying how you daven b'lashon kodesh. You know, that's the old joke that the Yaakov wear a yarmulke, of course, because it says Vayetze Yaakov. You think he would have gone without a yarmulke? Uzen nikra matzeva, and he says the reason why it's called the matzeva. Why is it called the matzeva? So I always thought it's because matzeva means something that's standing. It comes from the word nitzav, which means standing. So matzeva is a tombstone, stands erect. So he says the Kaim Bano Hamuna. He has a different explanation. The Kaim Bano Hamuna Milvat Hasharas HaNefesh, that it emphasizes the fact that we believe that not only is the soul eternal, Avagam Haguf, but also the body, which is buried in the tomb, the neshama is wherever it is, but the guf is buried in the ground there. Lo yichel gamrei, it's not going to disintegrate completely. El sheyamdu v'yikaimu v'yikimu b'tchiyas hamesim. The certain part of the body, k'kuvur b'stvarim shenisher min haguf eiz etzem mashmimenu yitzmach hakom b'tchiyas hamesim. There's at least one bone. It's the loose bone. That's what you're supposed to eat malav malka because it strengthens the loose bone. Whatever. Again, that's a separate topic. But the we believe that all the Mesim, Mechai Mesim, Atarav Shia, that we say it in davening every day 3 times. All the Mesim, or at least the ones that are worthy, are going to have Tchias HaMesim. So that means that physically they're going to have Tchias HaMesim. Zehu Matzeves Kvuras Rachel, Afil Masha Nikvar, who Nitza B'Kayim Ad Hayom, that even what was buried, even the physical part of Rachel, is still Nitzav. It's a Nitzav. He's interpreting Nitzav to mean that it still persists. V'im kosva al matzeva b'shem laz, and if you write in the matzeva in a foreign language, oshar lashon l'umim, or I don't know the difference between laz. Laz is lashon avodah zarah, or shar lashon l'umim, or any other language. Heim tarti desasri hadadi. It contradicts the whole essence of what a matzeva is. The matzeva who also lomar v'lo meid al matchia. The matzeva is a testimony to the fact that there's going to be tchias hamesim. For us, Yesukan ha'olam v'malchus shadai u'malchus adon yamin arts. And when Mashiach will come, so God will rule the world, and all the evil empires, and we could think of plenty and plenty of malchus adon will be removed from the world. Urishayim yina arum in arts, and all the wicked people will be shaken out. The Israel yu amachad, and the Jewish people will be united, one nation. L'shenenu lashon Torah, kadosh Torah. When Mashiach comes, there's no doubt we're going to talk lashon kodesh. V'hamuna yeh Yisrael, v'yiyeh goy echad ba'aretz, v'ech yichtav la'matzeva lashon lumim. The whole point of the matzeva is a testimony that's going to be tchias hamesim. So why are you writing the language of the non-Jewish language? It's contrary to the source of the matzeva, which is Shehu Yaakov Avinu of Shalom. Yaakov Avinu put up a matzeva, and he called it matzeva. That's what he said before in Lashon Kodesh. V'lo k'minhag hasof shel matzeva, and it's not. It's neither reflect. If you put in English words, it's neither a reflection of the original source of matzeva, which was Yaakov Avinu, who put it up with Hebrew words, and it's contrary to the ultimate state of the matzeva when Mashiach will come. Shema Rambes al ol matikum v'heim atzim mevaishin esemes. By putting up such a matzeva, it's a bezoyan for the mace, because it means that you're contradicting the whole point of the matzeva is that it's a testimony to the fact that it's b'tchias hamesim, and you're putting up a matzeva. Tchias hamesim, they're not going to speak English and they're not going to speak French. How do we know that?
I have another thing. Won't there be clear? Unfortunately, in all the thousands of years, a lot of these matzevas don't exist. We know that the Nazis and the communists destroyed all these matzevas. So they're still going to have tchias hamesim, even if the
he doesn't say. He says that tchias hamesim is going to be from one bone. He doesn't say that the matzeva is going to contribute to tchias hamesim. Matzeva is just a sign that there's going to be tchias hamesim.
I don't understand I don't understand how having it in a different language in any way contradicts that.
Because
when Tchias hamesim happens, even if we are all speaking Hebrew, so the mace is going to leave that spot. We're not going to need the matzeva anymore. It's going to go back to Israel, wherever. It's just a piece of stone.
That is an excellent point. I had the exact same thought that the matzeva, we put up the matzeva in the language that we're comfortable with, because that's what when we erect it, we're putting. But we're not saying that when the mace gets up, he's gonna take out a book and start reading it to be Lashon Kodesh, and he's gonna see the matzeva and he won't understand the words. So the mace has nothing to do with the matzeva. The matzeva is a way. I mean, one purpose of the matzeva is the matzeva is called tzion, so that the Kohanim should know where people are buried, because they're not allowed to be mitame. But who said? I mean, you'll see. I'll show you the rest of the piece. But he's connecting the matzeva to tchias hamesim. That's the thrust of what he's saying. That and you asked, how do we know they speak lashon kodesh and tchias hamesim? I mean, that's logical that they're not. Everything's going to be holy when Mashiach comes. The world, if it's l'sakin agam b'malchus shakai, so the whole world is going to be godly. So there's no place in a godly world for things that are secular. The language is secular language is secular. But I had the exact same thought that you just said. Let's see the rest of these. So he invokes a pasuk at the end of Yeshaya. Actually, I think it's probably a printer's error because it's in the end of Daniel. V'rabim yishene ofar yakitzu. The pasuk says that many who are sleeping in the dirt will awaken. That means it will be tchias hamesim. Elu chaya olam ve'elu lecharpa u'diron olam. Some will be awakened for eternal life, and others will awaken for infamy and disgrace. There was the Rishayim. L'chein ha'minhag etzel b'nei Yisrael lichtav al matzeva tehei nafsh tzurah b'tzurah ha'chayim. Okay, so here he's supporting what you were asking, who said the matzeva has anything to do with Chiyas HaMesim. He's bringing some support because we always write on the matzeva taf nun tzadei taf nun tzadei hey, right? B'tzurah ha'chayim v'achiosim kol meisei amcha Yisrael, that they're going to revive with all the other mesim. V'yesh, because the word surah means bound. He'll be bound in the binding of life, together with all the other neshamas of Klal Yisrael. V'yesh mekatzim v'apir shedush hakol merames al olam hatchiyah. The tehei nafshel tzura v'tzura ha'chaim means it will be bound in the binding of life, meaning when there's tchiyas hamesim chay olam. Abel hakosim b'shar l'shonos shein koshim tafnun tzadik beis hey. If they're writing it in French or in German or Hungarian, they're not going to write tafnun tzadik beis. I mean, the question you could write it, but he says if you didn't do it, v'gam en kosel hachiosim b'sei kol Yisrael yesh aleim lomer shehem me'akat asher l'diroin yakumu. We could say about them, if they deny Tchias HaMesim, they're part of the group that's going to be will end in disgrace. V'heim mevazin es hameis, it's a bezayin for the mace. Umeramzin zos b'matzev ahu shu b'loshu umim. By you're it's a disgrace for you're disgracing the mace by writing on his tombstone things in language which are not going to be spoken when there's Chiyas HaMesim. Shehu Talmud v'nitzav gampein l'charpu diron olam. This is also going to be a matzeva, but it's a matzeva which is going to be eternal disgrace and embarrassment. V'imkein hakrovim v'shar b'nei Yisrael shanu mitzuvim shlo lavazos meis ha'yeroi mitzan ha'meis atzmo l'salak ha'matzevahu. For the dignity of the mace, we should take away the matzeva. And it's disgracing both this mace and other people that are buried there. We're not allowed to change all the minhagim of burial. V'hine kol zeh kasafti al guf hadavar she'masha shanui lashon hamatzeva lashon laz. He says this is all in terms of the language of the matzeva, that it's in Hungarian. But masha also od shekasu mispar hashanim kederech hachadashim gamkin b'lashon laz. But even worse is what they wrote. They write the date in Julian numbers. It's a double and triple avera. The mispar hachadashim shelahem einu mechuvanim u'mispar bnei Yisrael. First of all, it's not the Jewish way. We're in Tafshin Pei Beis, and they're in 2022. And secondly, Umashasi.
The numbering of the months.
What?
You're talking about the months.
Numbering of the months.
No, he's talking. What?
That's Rosh Hashanah.
I think he's talking about the Gregorian calendar.
Oh, he's talking about both. He says the mispar chadashim shalahem einu meim chuvanim mispar bnei Yisrael. Okay, you're right. Because if they're in their New Year starts with January. Who said on the tombstone that it says if it's March? It doesn't say 3. It just say March. I don't know. but maybe it means, I don't know, Mispar Chadashim, I don't know. Umash is,
Chadash refers to the Gregorian as opposed to the Julian calendar.
yeah, that's what it says next. Umash Simu b'Mispar Hashanim u'Mispar Hanotz v'Yigadaitu Zis Deraisa. The fact that they have the year in the Julian year, that's an Issa Deraisa. Sharei b'Torah b'Parshas Mishpatim Nemer v'Shem Elokim Acherim L'Saskiru. Torah says you're not allowed to mention other gods. You're not you're not even allowed to use it as a reference point, because you're not allowed to tell somebody, meet me by this church, or meet me by the we have on Woodbridge Avenue base of Avodah Zarah, that big monstrosity. What?
That's real Avodah Zarah.
Yeah. So he says, "V'amar chacham v'chein chas b'posim v'asol gomer chaver hamtingli b'tzad avodah zarah ploni umidin nakat b'loshen hifil taskiro masha shafil eina masker mamish gam kenu b'chal iser." Since it says taskiro means to cause to be remembered. V'hamonim b'misparim nir if you're excited over Israhu al shem v'elakim acherim lo taskiro. So you're causing other gods to be mentioned. The taskiro haino bepeh or bechsav b'fi mashkasa min chaskinuch, even though taskiro is only if you verbalize it or you write it. Because came the idea minyan olam min azikar and machshava near the usher. Since even though maybe there's not a formal isser, but it's still an isser because it's causing you to think about the avodah zarah. Okay, then he says, V'inkein, in the next paragraph, people can go to the cemetery and they're going to read the tombstone, so they're going to read the Julian date, and they're going to, which is after the birth of Yashka, and they're also going to read the English words. It's going to cause other people to, besides the fact that it's bizarre for the nifter and it's bizarre for the other people in the cemetery, but it's also going to cause the people, the visitors, to do an avera. So the pasuk says, "Say tamei tamarlo." The pasuk says that if something is tamei, you should remove it and say to it, say tomo. You should say about something that's tomei. You're not allowed to use, if it was an avera done with an object, you can't use it for a mitzvah. Okay, he's talking about, the levush says that if you have an esrog that was murkav, besides the issue of whether it's whether an esrog can be murkav, but there's an avera involved in of kilayim. So the levush says you're not allowed to have an esrog because you're using an object of an avera. It's mos. It's inappropriate for a mitzvah. And he says, Umaran Hagam Bach Sam Sofer Tirz Betuf Tam Yafa Kushas Hamagan Avram. The Magan Avram disagrees with Levush because the Magan Avram says, according to Levush, if you have a shofar that came from what kind of animal does it come from? What are shofars on? Rams. If you have a ram that was from a mixed breeding, so we also kill lime. So it should be usher to use the ram's horn, and we never heard of such a thing. So he says the Chassam Sofer has an answer to that question. He says, "Kein Yerofin is daiti pasha shekavan ameisa zeh v'kavan shar ameisim yefshel lahotzi tov the tov." If you're able to remove it, then you should remove it. Then you should remove it from the cemetery. So that's the Maram Shiks. So the points that he makes are that the word matzeva is Hebrew, and Yaakov Avinu used the word matzeva, and the reason why it's called a matzeva is because it's going to be tchias hamesim, and it's a bizayon for them, and it's a stira to have. And when there's tchias hamesim, they're not going to speak English or secular languages, so therefore it's a lack of kavod for the mace. You could tone down what he's saying, because you ask good questions here. That I mean, the strongest raya that the Matseva is connected to Chiyas HaMesim is because it says Taf Nun Tzadi Beis Hey. But you could say that doesn't mean that the Matseva is for that purpose. On the Matseva, you're writing things that are important. So you write about a small eulogy, and you write when he was born, when he died, and what his name is. So why not write that he should have a Chiyas HaMesim? It doesn't mean that Matseva is that the Matseva is reflecting Chiyas HaMesim. But yeah, what?
In this instance, was there no Hebrew written and was just written in Hungarian, and the date was written in or was it both?
So he does.
What?
I mean, the way he's talking, he says like the Tavish message from Torah privacy. He say you must be writing that also.
Right, everything was in English or
There
Hungarian.
was no Hebrew at all.
Apparently,
That's what I'm saying.
Rav Waldenberg, in we won't have time to see it inside, but Rav Waldenberg considers the possibility in Tzitz Eliezer on page 6 that maybe if there's English and Hebrew on the Matseva, maybe that's acceptable, because then at least you show that you're machshav lashon hakodesh. But in the end, he rejects it also. He says that you shouldn't use it at all. That's what Rav Waldenberg says.
Does anybody else address this business with the year? Because we certainly seem to be using the years.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
Okay, good.
So I'm not going to just leave it hanging. So that's what he says. I mean, I would have, I mean, even if you don't accept all these premises that the Matseva has to do with Chiyas HaMesim, I would still say the whole idea of Matseva is to show cover to the Nifter. And in Olam HaEmes, Lashon HaKodesh is more, it's a holy tongue. It's definitely more choshev to have Lashon HaKodesh on the Matseva than it is to have secular wording on the Matseva, to have English on the Matseva, because it's not a holy language. The reason why it's called Lashon HaKodesh is because it's holy, and the Torah was given Lashon HaKodesh. So, I mean, he makes it you're over Yisurim Deraisa, and I mean, I'm not the Maram. I don't come to the toenails in Maram Shik. I'm just saying that even if you don't accept it fully, but there's still a strong value in Lashon HaKodesh.
But that's a reason to put Lashon HaKodesh on it. But to say that you can't put anything else on it, like why not? Why shouldn't we also say that all the eulogies at the funeral need to be in only Hebrew for covenant makers? No one will understand.
That's not covenant makes.
You're not even covering amazing. If you hold that using secular dates to the year's hero is Avodah Zarah, I mean, that shouldn't just apply to.
Yeah, there's two separate issues. I mean, you're making a very good point, and Harvey said that in the beginning also. I mean, I have this all the time. And people ask me to help them write on the Matseva, to write wording, and when I discuss with them that it's better, because that's for sure that I mean, even I think it's better if a person doesn't mind, it's better. So, but people always say, I want to be able to read the Matseva. Sometimes people, the wives or the children, they won't be able to read it in Hebrew. So they want to come to the cemetery. They would like to, even though they know that those Hebrew letters say Chaim Yankel, that's their father, but if they can't read it, they don't connect to it the same way. So there's a strong value in if that's. I mean, like you're saying, the reason why we do that Spadim in English is because that's the language that we understand. That's what we connect to. If it has, maybe the people here, you're all very educated, so in Lashon Kodesh, you could connect to Matseva and Lashon Kodesh, but there's other people out there that would prefer to have either some or all English, because for them it's a bigger covenant for them to be in a language that they understand. Okay, those are the issues here. So I'm just going to show you the Shevet. I'm going to show you that many of the poskim. That's why I started. Not everybody was here, but many poskim quote the position of the Maram Shik, and I was only able to find. In the end, I found Rav Yasher that justifies the minhag of America, but here.
Did you talk about it?
Yasher Chaim, I don't think he talks about it. Yeah, I don't think so. The Kobo talks about it. So he says Shevet Levi is Rav Osner. So Jonathan Teitelbaum sent me an email today with a picture of his wife Nadine's grandmother. Her name was Sophie. Her English name was Sophie. Her Hebrew name was, I forgot what, Gittel or something. So, and she was Nadine's grandmother was the sister of Rav Wosner. Rav Wosner was in Bnei Brak, a very big Haredi posek who was nifter a year ago, and they were very, very close. He said that she used to talk to him every single day, and her Hebrew name was Zelda. So her given name was Zelda, but people called her Sophie. So when she died, the family wanted to write Zelda on the matzeva, and they wanted to write it in English also. And they wanted to write Sophie, and they wanted to write it in English, but there were other family members that said that they knew the Maram Shik, that they have to write in Hebrew, and you shouldn't be using Sophie, you should be using Zelda. So Jonathan said the Rav Wosner made a pshara. He said you could write Sophie, but write it in Hebrew letters. But everything, at least do it in Hebrew. Do it in Hebrew, but it's actually, it says Zelda in parentheses. I think it says Sophie in parentheses or Zelda in parentheses. Sophie.
My end.
What?
My end.
My end. I don't think anybody thought about that till now. Well, that's true.
Maybe.
Okay, so here,
I think they put an olive.
an aleph.
Sophia.
Okay. So I showed Jonathan this too from the Shevet Lady. The Shevet Lady here says, it says Kibalti Michtavo Mekunches V'im Atzevos on page 2. So he says this is a letter to Rav Yitzchak Bartfeld, who's a Rav where in Mexico. So he said he received this letter, and then in the second paragraph he says Betzemi Matzeva. The basis for Matzeva is from Rachel. Who gathered see in Hamusker Tour? The custom Sham Papisha, the Matzeva who Zichron Leida Mi covers Sham. The Prisha says the Matzeva is in order you should know whose kever it is. So that's why he put the name. But he says Va'ayin B'Chuvas Maram Shik Shekasav. And so then here he quotes the Maram Shik that says what we just saw, that the Matzeva is it reflects the fact that there's going to be Tchiyas HaMesim. And then in the next paragraph it says V'ayin Sham Shehirish Al HaKos Matzeva V'Lashonos Laz V'Umim D'Oz Yisakin O V'Malchus Shaka V'Shoy Yinarmin Arts V'Loshin Tel Loshin Torah V'Loshin Kodesh. He says if the Matzeva is to remember the fact that there's going to be Tchiyas HaMesim, so why are you using a language that's not going to be used at the time of Tchiyas HaMesim? So in the end, after he discusses this at some length, so in the end, if you look in the next column, where I underlined it, Akopanu Lamaisa, Minig Mimos Om Hakim Atzevos, it's an old minig tam Atzevos, Begam Lichtov, Choras al Matzevi Shemus Anikvarim, and the minig is to write the names on the Matzeva, Vaharbi Nogim Gam Gahasker Masei Matovim, and many people write a brief epitaph on the Matzeva, V'chalil Lahagzim, and you should not exaggerate. That's because it's a kitrug. If you say things about the nifter that are not true, so then it's not to his benefit, because then God says, hey, it says here that you were such a big Baal Tzedakah, but in the last year of your life you gave $3.23 for tzedakah. I once read that Mayor Dinkins, they had public disclosure of his finances. So he was a very wealthy person. So how much did he give in charity? And I think it was something like $500. That was how much stock he kept. You compare it. Klal Yisrael is so super generous. People that don't have money give thousands of dollars to tzedakah. So, but you're not supposed to make magzim. Olichto bilshonos goyim kasher his argom maram shik. So he says he agrees with the maram shik that you're not supposed to put secular writing on the matzeva. So that's why he recommended when his sister died that it should be in Hebrew, and that's how it was. They wrote it in Hebrew in deference to the Shevet Levi. So they wrote Sophie, but they wrote it in Hebrew letters.
He says here maybe just parenthetically hypothetically
Where
about maybe
was the
putting a name
Matseva? In Israel or?
No, the Matseva is America.
America.
He writes what?
So he says maybe you can put the name, at least the family name.
Oh, he says, "What I choose from America." Nimratzim all beside Hanagas based. Umasha tzia kavod sheksav yekaroi based on Matzeva Lois signal. אבל אין זה חיכה אחר מודרנה, אולי במקום שהם הגיעו לכלל משהו, אותו לכתוב על כפיים שהם משפחה בגלל, כדי שאם זה יהיה במקום קורס. Oh, he says in the brackets at the end of this paragraph, that if the family doesn't understand Hebrew, so it's acceptable to write the family name in
Know who it is.
what?
So they should know who it is.
So they should know who it is. When they come to the cemetery, they want to be able to find their father or their mother. So let me skip to he has another tshuva, the Maramshik on the next page, but I'm not going to go through the whole tshuva. Maybe yeah. So here, look at the last paragraph. He says, on page 3, the last paragraph in Tshuva Nun Vav, in the second column, the second paragraph. When a person dies, all connections, all his desires in the material world cease. All that a person will take with him, it says in the pasuk. You don't take along all the monetary assets. The only thing you take along is the Torah mitzvos. And the Mar B'Lashon HaKodesh. If you're writing something about the nifter in a foreign language, a secular language, harehu meganes hames, umeid olav shelo hayu lo cheluk ba'olam habar olam hakadosh v'emes v'shekol inyan of hayirak. But you're connecting the person with a world of sheker by writing in a non-Jewish or a secular language, which when ultimately Mashiach will come, they're not going to use all those secular languages. Everything's going to be in Lashon Kodesh. So, okay, so there are many. This is the Maram Sheikh. Look at the last page. I'll show you another tshuva. There's a sefer called Sharei Tzedek. And I have said many times that what I love to do, giving the shiur, is to find svarim that I never heard of, and I like to look at the Sharblat. This is written by Menachem Mendel Panet, and he was the Rav in a city called Dej. It's spelled in Hebrew Dalet Ayin Shin Shin, but it's pronounced Dej. How do I know? Because his great-great-grandson had a shul in Borough Park on 57th Street, where my brother-in-law lived. My brother-in-law davened by the Deja Rebbe, and he was nifter a few years ago, but I'm sure that he was from the same family. He was the Deja Rebbe. And that was his name. His name was Panet, Rabbi Panet, and he was the Deja Rebbe. So he says he was also Rav in Hungary. He was born 1818. He died 1884. So he's the same period of time as the Maram Shik. So he says on the left side, he wants to put up a matzeva for his mother-in-law, and he wants to write the epitaph in Hungarian. Hadavar Pasha the Isser Gadol Lashanas Minhag Yisrael. It's you're changing Minhag Yisrael. Lachkol Dafka B'Lashon Hakodesh V'zeh Ezer Shana Mashen Nishalti B'Chayotz. I was asked about this a few years ago. V'Yishafti D'Zeh Nichol B'Mashe Kosa B'Torah Kosha Lo Sakim L'Cha Matzeva Asher Sanei Hashem. The Torah says you shouldn't put up a matzeva that God despises. So he's using that as a play on words here. That this is Matzeva Kazus in the Samakim, Matzeva, which is written in secular language, the Rebbeinu Shalom despises. Kikol Av Yisrael Chuseim Toevahu, because you're following the Chukas Hagayim, like the Maram Shik said. Uve'emes Iker Hamadas Matzeva never be Yaakov Avinu. Allah Rachel Imenu Mavur Akavana Kabir Shrashi Parshichi Bichtei Sheyedu Bnei Yisrael Makam Hakever. So here's making another point. than the Maram Shik. He says the reason why, Rashi says that the reason why Yaakov buried Rachel where he did is in order that they when the Jews pass by, Yispal Sham, that the Jews should not, he put up, that's Rashi, I didn't check the Rashi, he says they put up the Matzeva, so when the Jews go into Golus, they'll pass by the Matzeva of Rachel Imenu, and they'll be Mispal, the Yor is Nishmas Hamesh, Yispal Avur Beneha, and they, by davening to Rachel, there's a whole issue about what does it mean when you go to basic Kvaros, you're supposed to daven to the niftar, or is it just the Makom Kodesh? That's a whole another issue. But he says whatever it is, you're supposed to daven there. And kidol morat tefillah shemispal mamesim al hachaim, and by inspire. But when the mesim in turn you trigger that the mesim daven for the, because we say in Yiddish always it should be good to better. That's what it's essentially asking, that the mace should go before the Kisei HaKavod and should be our advocates. Avim chas v'shalom yasu iser gadol zeh dahainu ke'eim biyush l'lashon kodesh asher bo nivra olam bo nitna haTorah HaKdosha. But if you're going to have secular words on the matzeva, and it's a design for Lashon Kodesh, which is with the world was created with Lashon Kodesh, and the Torah was given Lashon Kodesh. Ve'ech yomar she'ein zeh lekaved hameis v'yachal halashon b'lashon acher chas v'shalom. You can't say it's going to be a covenant for the mace. Memeli yachal lios behepech dahainu sheyitzaref oven zeh v'shar avonos. What you're doing is the avera of writing in secular language is going to maybe connect to the other averis that the nifter did. Uveis upon him yaman hameis l'spal chayim al she'asla yado bizayin kazeh l'shanena kadosha. Because of the nifter, the family members went and did a terrible avera. They used secular language. The body is a gadol v'chamer l'asiskein u'ishum ofen l'yichto matzev rakol shakodesh. Okay, that's, you see, he's very. Then he says, "V'risi," the last two lines. "V'risi v'divrei Maus Kabal Taraso, Shagon, Marashak, Kvar Asuzah Israel." Who's the Marashak? Shlomo Kluger. Shlomo Kluger was also one of the great poskim. He said it's also to write in the secular language. So Ravad Yosef, who on page 4, who is the master of all sources, and I was hoping when I saw the Tshuva of Ravad Yosef that he would quote somebody that takes a different position and says it's okay, but he doesn't. So he, if you look, we only have 10 minutes left. So as far as this issue about, he quotes the Maram Shik, and first he talks about using secular language, and then at the bottom he says, the last three lines, where they use secular Julian dates, that's a double avera. This is the Raisa, because it's the Shem came Achem, Saskiru. So, and then if you skip to where I underlined it, the Maram ben Chaviv says it's not only on a matzeva, you should never use secular dates. You always have to write. Unlike what people do who live in Golos, live no speak the same, Kamin Anotrim, B'Shemus HaChodashim, Minyan Hashanah, Bein Nochalas. They use the dates that have to do with Yoshka. Meir Ash, another great Hungarian posek. He says the same thing. The dates should be in Hebrew and the matzeva should be in Hebrew. But then Ravad Yosef says, "V'avol bi shebesifri shas Jews yabia omer halesi lahakol min adim miksivis misra shalom min ninyana bigras chol." He says, "I paskin that it's okay to use secular dates. Why? Ki ve'emes ein mismarim shayach l'edish yeshu anatri." The cheshbon doesn't work out. There's a lot written about that. The Rashbats who lived about 700-800 years ago. Because the Gemara says that he was a student of Shimon ben Prachya. I think.
Yeshua ben Prachia.
Yeshua ben Prachia, and Yeshua ben Prachia lived way before the Churban. So how could Yashka the
Even
Churban was in the year 70 from the birth of Yashka. So if it was it doesn't work out because Yeshua.
No, even they say.
Even they say
that's wrong. Even they say it's off by 4 years.
Okay, so in the end, he says
Like a common year.
so he holds that there's no issur to use secular dates because the dates are not correct anyway, and he says, okay, but nonetheless, in the end, he says, Mikol Makom, the very last part that's underlined. Mikol Makom Mod Ani Sham Matzevi Shel Beis Omen Yesh Hakbet Al Kach V'Lo Lichtav El Haminyan Shel Amonu Rebbeis Olam. We should use the Jewish calendar date. That was always the minhag. Matzevu Eitz Ashar Zanefesh Ukamoshe Kosa Marash Vital B'Shar Hamatzos. So here he has other svarim that support what the Maram Shik said, that the Matzeva is a testimony to the fact that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. V'ein HaNefesh Makeres El B'minyan Shehu Amiti V'Hametvei HaNochem B'Olam Emes. And the Nefesh only recognizes things of truth. In Olam HaEmes, the truth is, even before Tchias HaMesim, when the soul, wherever it goes, when it leaves this world, they don't speak English in Gan Eden. Okay, so he says that you should. His conclusion is everything should be in Lashon Kodesh, and then I just have on page 5 that I won't have time to go through. The brilliance of Rabbi Yosef, that he shows that that there were many Gedolim that used. He has a list of around 20 different tshuvas where they used secular dates, and even the Chassam Sofer, who in other words, he had such tremendous bekiyas, he even knew the dates in the tshuvas. You can look at it later; you see it's so impressive. So even the Chassam Sofer, who writes in his drushes on the Torah that it's usher to use Julian dates, but in his tshuvas he uses Julian dates. So he says it must be because he was chayzer. He reversed himself because afterwards he found out that that's not the accurate date of when Yashka was born. So, but what I wanted to show you in the end is, and then Rav Aldenberg also, that's the next page 6. It's Eliezer. He also agrees with the Maram Shik. Not everybody was here in the beginning, but I said I looked through a whole bunch of svarim on Avelis, and everybody quotes the Maram Shik. There's a Sefer Kolbo, which is a classic. He was a Rabbi Eichenstein. He was a Rav out west someplace, but he wrote a sefer that's very makubal. He writes where I have it underlined. Can you Greenwood? Yes, we're on page 7. He says they shouldn't use the non-Jewish dates. So here we have finally somebody that says that if you use the secular dates, if somebody wants to, you don't have to make a machlokas out of it. Right. It seems that like if you have the Jewish date, then it's anyways not so upset about it. Yeah. But you see, even if you only have the English date, it's not kedai to make a machlokas about it. Yeah. Okay, so but what I found in the end is, after searching, finally I found a source that has a more lenient position, and that's from Rav Yashiv. There's Rabbi Cook was a very close Talmud of Rav Yashiv. Rabbi Cook his father was I believe he was killed in a train accident. No, it was a train accident, right? His father and mother, and they what was his father? His father was Rabbi Yehuda Cook, right? He was the Rabbi Yitzchak Cook. Yeah. So he was the son of He was Tzvi Yehuda. Rav Cook, the Rav Harashi, was Rabbi Yitzchak.
Right, and
Tzvi Yehuda was the one that was
Yehuda's son, Yitzchak,
Yeah.
was killed in the train.
Oh, he was killed in a train accident.
With his
So,
wife,
right. So Tzvi Yehuda was the head of
Merkaz Arav.
Merkaz Arav. Okay. So he was killed in a train, and they left over a young child who was a Yasom, and Rav Yashiv sort of adopted him, and he grew up under Rav Yashiv's tutelage. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. David Goldberg became very close friends with, or a Talmud of David Goldberg has carved himself to Gedolim. David Goldberg spent a lot of time when Rav Yashiv was alive. He used to love to go learn there and listen to the shiurim. He had tremendous avos Torah, so he got to meet Rav Ben Zion Cook. So he brought me this sefer when he visited Eretz Yisrael. Rav Ben Zion Cook put out already a numbers farm with psakim from Rav Yashiv. So he has a sefer on Avelos. So he says, I have an underlined Sheila. This is Rav Ben Zion Cook is writing this, but this is the question that he posed to Rav Yashiv. Are you able to? It's page 8. Are you able to use secular dates? It's the next to last page. Secular dates on the matzevas. He says Tshuva Rabbeinu in matzevizu hu yechida shekosaba ein kain ein lasos shonim mikulam. If in the whole cemetery everybody has, like in Deans, so you have, let's say, you have different Hasidim, Bava Hasidim and Spinker Hasidim. All the matzevas are the same. They're all in Lashon Kodesh. There's not a single English word in there. So if somebody goes and puts up a matzeva with English, that's a pirza. But if there are others that have secular dates, it's okay. At secular, not secular, if they have secular language. And the Chutz La'aretz, there's definitely many matzevos that are written in secular language. So here we have finally somebody, Rav Yashiv. The Harvey asked me at the beginning whether I'm going to conclude that everybody has to redo the matzevos and replaster them. So Rav Yashiv says it's okay, because if the if that's the minhag in the makom, then it's acceptable to do it, and I think, he doesn't elaborate, but I think that the reason is because of all the svaras that everybody was saying here, that people want, the reason why they write it in English is not because they want to promote the English language, it's not because they're English majors, it's because they want to be able to relate to the matzeva. So that's what he's saying. If other people do it, it's not a bizayon, because you're doing what's common. Like you said, the hespedim are in English, so they want the matzeva in English so people could understand who it is and what it's about. So, and then I spoke to Roy first today in Chicago, so I consult with him oftentimes. I asked him also about the matzevos in English wording. He said you shouldn't, you could tell people it's better to be Lashon Kodesh, but you shouldn't make an issue about it. You don't have to put up a fight, and you don't have to tell them it's terrible. Or, if that's what they prefer.
I
Yes.
think when I was planning the matzevot for my parents, I think I asked you that question as well, and I think this is exactly what you told me. To look around in the cemetery and see what the other ones in the area are like.
Okay. And be consistent with the other matzevos.
Be consistent with the other
Okay.
matzevot, except I added, obviously, the psukim, or the saying, whatever I
Okay.
in Lashon Kodesh, but the name and the key dates were in English.
Okay, look, all right. So at least I'm consistent.
Compromise.
I'm glad that what I told you a few years ago was consistent with what I'm saying now. So okay, so that's the bottom line. So you see, there's a very strong amount of literature in the poskim, strongly recommending that the matzeva be totally in Lashon Kodesh, and if it's possible to do so, I still think that it's better. But if there's reasons why members of the family are going to be upset and they want it to be in a language that they understand or relate to more, then it's definitely okay to do it that way. Okay.
So,